Tiberian Sun. Yes, yes, yes. This game is amazing. It has its issues, but I couldn't care less. It's smoothie, it's fun, and they don't make them like they used to. Too bad it's unfinished though. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that was cut from the original release that the regular player just doesn't see. A lot of this has already been covered here on this platform, except for this one notable and interesting thing. There's a unit, a proper one, that still lurks around in the game files but is never ever used in the actual game. Even the hardcore Tiberian Sun fans might not know that it exists. It's so forgotten that it's never been covered here on YouTube until now. The only mention of it can be found in some modding forums in the wikis. This video is about that unit. I can make a longer introduction, but you get the idea. This is going to be very interesting. Tiberian Dawn is the predecessor of Tiberian Sun. You can clearly see that a large chunk of Tiberian Sun units have directly evolved from Tiberian Dawn. Minigunners are now light infantry, grenadiers are now disc throwers, recon bikes are now attack cycles, and so on. But one notable infantry unit is oddly missing its second generation form in Tiberian Sun. And this unit is the Chemical Warrior. There is also the Flamethrower, but I will talk about that later. The Chemical Warrior was a brand new unit in Tiberian Dawn's expansion covert operations. It was similar in nature to the Flamethrower. You can clearly see a trend that none is advancing its experimentation with Tiberium, so it's really odd that this newly developed unit doesn't show up at all in Tiberian Sun. You can clearly see where I'm going with this. This mystery unit that we're going to talk about is indeed the Chemical Warrior. But before we delve into this further, we should acknowledge that this intended unit can actually be seen indirectly in Tiberian Sun's Firestorm expansion. To cut to the chase, Nod's computer-assisted biologically augmented lifeform has gone rogue after reactivation. It turns against both GDI and Nod. Because of this, Nod loses its ability to use cyborgs, their short-term replacement being the Elite Cadre. Or Cadre. Whatever, Elite Cadre. The Elite Cadre uses this sprite, which is used sometimes in other campaign missions, but its cameo is this. Now, let's look at the sprite again. It does look similar to the cameo, but it's missing these tubes. This cameo is actually not the Elite Cadre. This cameo is the Unused Chemical Warrior. It was created for the Chemical Warrior, but never used up until this point. Very interesting. Now, let's move on to the source code. Well, there really is no proper published source code of Tiberian Sun, but there are these very easily editable configuration files. If we look at all of the defined infantrymen, we can see that there it is, the Chemical Warrior, under the codename Weed Guy. It's called the Chem Spray Infantry, but now it's repurposed as a missile? Damn, that's rough. Right here we can see its intended stats before it was turned into a missile. With some simple tweaking, we can fully implement this unit into the game. We can fetch its original, totally unused sprites that still do exist deeper in the game files and make a new unit that uses these sprites and these stats. Because you're not here for a tutorial, I have uploaded an unlisted video of how to do it. If you're interested, it's available in this video description. Also in this video description, you can see a GitHub link where I have uploaded all the necessary files where I have changed stuff. All you have to do is download this, delete the previously used rules.ini file, and put all these files into the Tib Suns game folder. That's it. Boot up the game and you will have the same things available in the game as in my gameplay. Now let's see how this unused unit looks in the game. So I'm just going to go into a random skirmish game, and I'm going to be Nod, and make sure that tech level is at least at level 2. And all I have to do is open up my MCV, make a power plant, and then a hand of Nod. And here we can see that we can build Chem Spray Infantry. Now let's see how it looks like. And there we go. This is the unused Chem Spray Infantry unit. It's pretty interesting. It has these idle animations, and it looks actually pretty cool in my opinion. It is a bit weird to get used to because I have played this game for such a long time that new units look strange to me, but I don't think that the texture, or sorry, the sprite, is that bad. It looks pretty decent to me. It's quite slow and it doesn't get damaged by Tiberium, and it costs only 300 credits to make. Now this unit doesn't have an unused weapon, so when I'm about to fire at the ground, the weapon that you're about to see it's not cut content. I just made it myself. But you can see it, I made it that it shoots green Tiberian flames. This is the same texture from the flame tank. It's quite interesting. I made it similar to the Tiberian Dawn's chemical spray infantry, chemical warrior, whatever. But yeah, this unit, it's pretty interesting to use because it's actually a very, very bad unit in terms of like attack, in terms of offensive shit. Sorry, okay, let's see, but it's a very good defensive unit. That was my point. It's a really good defensive unit. Okay, I no longer have an MCV, but we can just mutually ignore that fact. Okay, I no longer have a hand. I can't build units. But let's ignore that and let's try to find the enemy's base. This game is amazing.
Yes, it is.
Now, while I struggle to use this unit in an offensive way, let me explain why it is not that great at attacking. As I said previously, the unit is quite slow and its weapons range is also small, so it can get outranged very easily. It's an infantry unit, so it's very vulnerable to that. Also, it deals a lot of collateral damage, essentially meaning that it can accidentally cause friendly fire. Furthermore, its weapon uses stream logic, which is notoriously buggy on hills. Having said that, there's a lot more that we can talk about regarding this unit. It has 5 unique death animations. Now, in the game, you can only see 2 unique death animations, because the other 3 are hard-coded to use the default infantry death animations. Here you can see all the sprites for the chem spray infantry. You can see that in some death animations, a light blue liquid is released when it dies. This is probably the Tiberium mixture that was meant to power its weapon. Interestingly, when you kill Tiberium fiends, you can see the same blue liquid. As to why these sprites were never used, we don't know, but I have my theory. As you saw earlier, the weed guy was repurposed to make cluster missiles work, so it may have simply been forgotten. Another detail is that the sprite animation should logically be named weedguy.shp, but it isn't. It's called weed.shp. This matters because there already is a unit with the codename Weed. It's the Weed Eater vehicle for 9. However, that unit uses voxels rather than SHP files for its animations. Therefore, this overlap may have caused the unit animation to be completely overlooked by the developers, but at this point we're deep into speculation territory. The fact that it has 5 death animations and the fact that it was originally listed as the 5th infantry unit leads me to suspect that it was made pretty early on in development. Now, what about the flamethrower? Literally every other Tiberian Dawn infantry unit has its own counterpart in Tiberian Sun. Well, once again, we don't know for certain. In my opinion, the chemical warrior was intended to completely replace the flamethrower in Tiberian Sun. Since Tiberium is much more accessible in Tiberian Sun's lore, if the unit proved effective in Tiberian Dawn, it would make perfect sense for the flamethrower to be replaced. Of course, in later releases we can see that this wasn't the case, but it's possible that this was the original intention during Tiberian Sun's development. Another interesting detail is that in the original Weed Guy stats, we can see it was supposed to be owned only by GDI. This is most likely just a technical leftover, with no real meaning behind it. Its prerequisites are listed as barracks, which means it could have been produced by both the GDI barracks and the Hand of None, so the idea of it being limited only to GDI doesn't really make sense. Still, it's worth pointing this out, because originally there was supposed to be a GDI weed clearer unit. Weeds, or more simply veins, were early on meant to function a lot more differently than they do in the final game, but this was just an idea that never made it into the code. so there's a tiny chance that this was meant to be the Wheat Clear unit, but realistically it couldn't have been. The fact that it's named Chemspare Infantry more or less disproves this possibility. And that's pretty much it. If you like this sort of stuff, I recommend checking out the Cutting Room Floor website, where you can find even more information on Tiberian Sun's cut content, as well as cut content from other CNC games. I also recommend trying the Tiberian Sun's Retro mod. It restores and interprets a lot of better game content from the very early stages of development. Anyway, if you like this video, you know what to do. The next video will be about Command & Conquer Red Alert. Okay, bye bye.